I don't think we're probably on the same page on this, because I personally think that there's already pretty good ways of knowing what profits companies are making relative to their costs, what profits, the fossil fuel companies, the supermarkets are making, because we can see that.
Hello and welcome to the 5 Masters series, where thought leader, social entrepreneur and fair society advocate Phillip Ullmann is here with an expert guest to discuss ways in which we can create a freer society. I wanted to get into the notion of the public ledger. What is a public ledger?
Okay, so it ties into this concept of sensitive measuring of what's really going on. And so we talked about inflation. I want everybody to know that their particular circumstance is reflected, and that it's known that they can't put food on the table, and that they can't feed their kids, and that they can't heat their house. That has to be visible to everybody in order for it to be resolved. It sounds initially it's invasive, but I'm talking about protecting people. I was discussing with Flo Reeds of Unheard. As if you've got nothing to hide, there's nothing to worry about. So you've got to move to measures that everybody understands. So what I'm talking about is a public ledger, which actually would record how people's money is being spent, so that you would be able to test. I could go on the ledger and see that my own circumstance is reflected on the ledger, and therefore people and the advantage of that is the problems are going to get resolved. So it's a completely, totally transparent ledger, which enables society to sort out the real problems.
Is this actually something sort of physical, or something? How would I find out whether my interests are?
It's a database. It's like your bank account.
Yeah.
In very simple terms. If you went to shop at Tesco's and you had a load of items, that would be visible on a public ledger. Now, that sounds, well, that's invasive. The answer is...
I've been watched more.
No, but you're not. The bottom line is, we need that information in order to protect people. If you're not doing anything wrong and you're buying products then there's nothing to worry about, but without having visibility. I'm a businessman, I'm a pragmatist, and I sort big problems out. You can't sort out a problem if you don't know what the problem is. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. Absolutely.
And there's a dividing line with certain things, but primarily to know what people are suffering, to know how expenditure happens, is critical. So I see a public ledger would enable genuine measurement to be made of who's suffering and what's actually happening to prices, and it won't be obscure. And in that model, then you'll be able to see what Tesco's and Asda, all these are paying, and that starts to create what in economic terms you start to talk about a perfect market, because suddenly there's information, and you can't pull the wool over people's eyes, because it's actually totally visible, not just to the supermarkets themselves who actually watch this stuff, but to everyone.
So it would be giving access basically to everyone to be able to see this data.
You would be able to see that these oil companies are actually overcharging, and there's and you say to them, no, you're a trustee, you're not increasing the price, because your costs haven't changed, and that is going to cause people to die. Therefore, you're not doing it.
And I can't see oil companies subscribing to that at all.
No, what I'm saying, they're not voluntarily agree to it. That's why I say to it needs. But the point is, the 99% are not the CEOs or the shareholders, and those people will benefit from it. So democracy, in the end, will work. But because in the end, it's only a very small number of people that are benefiting from that, and the vast majority are being exploited.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
So I don't think we're probably on the same page on this, because I personally think that there's already pretty good ways of knowing what profits companies are making relative to their costs, what profits the fossil fuel companies, the supermarkets are making, because we can see that. We've seen that there have been windfall profits, and I a lot of this would depend on how the actual thing would work. How, for example, something like a central bank digital currency with a distributed ledger that recorded all of the transactions that were going on in that economy. The Bank of England's already looking at doing that. That technology has actually been around for quite a long time.
Yeah.
The distributed ledger technology, which again, as you said, is this decentralized database where all of the transactions that take place on the network are recorded by every computer on that network. It requires a huge amount of computing power. That's one issue with it. But I think my main issue with the kind of the attempt to solve a lot of the problems we have using new technologies is that the way that the technological solutions are implemented isn't neutral. So the technologies that we develop reflect, broadly speaking, the political situations in which they're devised. So you had a lot of claims, for example, after the financial crisis, that cryptocurrencies, which are also based on this decentralized ledger technology, would revolutionize the world because everyone, we wouldn't need central banks anymore. People would have control over these currencies and they would, liberate people from under the grips of the financial system. But of course, ultimately what we've seen is that cryptocurrencies have been rolled out and the biggest beneficiaries have been those already who have wealth and large, powerful financial institutions, many of which have now started specializing in kind of trading these assets. I think I agree that there's a need for more transparency, but I think that there are simpler ways to get there than rolling out this big new technological solution, which might not actually solve things because as long as you have the same configuration of political interests making decisions on the back of that information, you don't necessarily get a shift.
Totally aligned. No, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting, I'm putting together a number of stages in the transition. You can't roll out a CBDC in the current climate. It's going to be a complete and total disaster. It'll be dystopian. But if we move to the trustee-based model, where trustees their purpose in life is to meet the needs of other people and to meet the needs of nature, and everybody is aligned with that purpose, then the distributed ledger functions to achieve that purpose. I'm not suggesting a digital ledger now, not in a million years, but once you've established this alignment of purpose, then it's visible. Then you want to see the problem and you want to prevent people from exploiting the system. So I couldn't agree with you more. We have to start with what you call the ownership model, and I think that and I don't think we're disagreeing either, by the way. I don't think, we talk about, I completely think that capitalism has had its day and it's led up to a world of huge debt, which is massively creating inequality and killing lots of people. We can go into all the reasons why it is, but it is. And healthcare inequality, where people can live within 20 miles of each other and the life expectancy is 20 years different. That's murder, very simply. So I don't think we're disagreeing. The question is, I'm a pragmatist. How do you actually do it? And you do it by getting the concept of ownership right as one step. And then when you've got the ownership right, do you accept once you've got the right alignment on purpose, then you do need the visibility. Does that make sense?
I can imagine in a very different form of society, a way in which, distributed ledger technology could be useful for all sorts of things. People have suggested that it could be used as, for example, a secure way of voting, there's lots of different potential applications for the technology, I agree. I just think, as I was saying, politics comes before technology. And I think a lot of people have this kind of techno-utopian view, and you see it a lot in kind of cryptocurrency spaces, in libertarian spaces, of we'll fix all of society's problems with this new technology. We've got climate change, so we'll pump CFCs into the atmosphere and that will stop it. Or, we've got problems with the financial system, so we'll move to cryptocurrency and then we won't have inequality.
Well, listen, guys, we are out of time, but thank you very much because it's certainly been a really interesting discussion. So thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure the conversation will continue in the comments as well. And remember that if you are enjoying the 5 Masters series, then please do subscribe because there's going to be a lot more very informative and interesting discussions to come, and there already have been. Thank you so much once again to Grace and also to Philip, of course, and hopefully we'll see you next time here on the 5 Masters series.